People always ask what makes someone become so detached from everyone and everything, as if detachment is a single wound with a single cause, as if one bad parent, one diagnosis, one trauma neatly explains it all. But the truth is quieter, more layered, and harder to accept. Detachment is rarely the absence of feeling. More often, it's the result of feeling too much for too long. When I look at people like her, the ones who burn bright and then vanish, who love fiercely from a distance and lose interest the moment something becomes real, I don't see coldness. I see a nervous system that learned early that intensity is safer than continuity. Because continuity requires trust, and trust is expensive. She falls in love with the idea of a person for years, poems, art, stories, longing. But when the relationship finally starts, the magic collapses in days. People ask, how can the switch flip so fast? But the switch didn't flip then, it flipped long ago. What you're seeing is the moment when fantasy hands the wheel to reality, and reality is heavier. Desire thrives in absence. Attachment lives in presence. For some people, presence feels like pressure. There's a type of personality, and I say this without judgment, that bonds best through imagination. From afar, people are limitless. They don't demand emotional labor. They don't disrupt internal rhythms. They don't introduce unpredictability in the nervous system. They stay clean, symbolic, safe. The moment someone becomes real, reciprocal, close, they stop being an idea and start being a responsibility. And responsibility can feel like suffocation to a system that associates closeness with loss of autonomy. So, the brain does what it learned to do early. It shuts the door before the room overheats. This isn't cruelty, it's regulation. The same pattern shows up in hobbies. Obsession at the beginning, total immersion, talking about nothing else, drawing guitar strings and notebooks, thinking about it day and night. And then, nothing. Emptiness, staring at the wall, walking away even after investing time, money, praise. People call it laziness or inconsistency or lack of discipline. But that moment when someone suddenly leaves something they loved is often not boredom, it's exhaustion. It's the nervous system hitting a saturation point and pulling the emergency brake. Some people don't pace joy, they flood themselves with it, and flooding always ends in shutdown. When you grow up in emotionally chaotic environments, especially ones where warmth and harm coexist, you don't learn emotional permanence, you learn volatility. You learn that feelings rise fast and disappear just as fast. You learn not to anchor your identity in any one state because it won't last. So you stop building altars to things. You treat joy like a visitor, not a home. That joke her mother makes, the one about hurting her and then winning her back with chocolate, may sound casual, even humorous, but it contains a brutal lesson. Love is unstable, pain is negotiable, and emotions can flip without warning. Children raised in that atmosphere often become incredibly adaptable. They survive by staying flexible. They don't cling, they don't root, they don't insist on permanence. Detachment, in that sense, isn't a failure to attach, it's a refusal to drown. There's also the element of stimulation. Some nervous systems are calibrated to feel alive only under intensity, danger, novelty, chaos, movement. Calm feels flat, stability feels numb, safety feels boring. So they chase what spikes sensation, new places, new people, risk, change. This is why dangerous situations can feel thrilling while everyday life feels empty. It's not that they don't want peace, it's that peace doesn't register. And when intensity becomes the baseline, everything else fades. So when people ask, why doesn't she bond more when she spends more time with us? The assumption behind the question is already flawed. Bonding doesn't work the same way for everyone. For some, closeness deepens connection. For others, closeness erodes it. Some people love best in small doses. They don't starve themselves of people because they don't care. They ration contact because they do. Seeing friends once a year isn't avoidance, it's preservation. Letting calls go to voicemail isn't indifference, it's boundary. Distance is not the opposite of attachment for them, it's the condition under which attachment survives. The tragedy is that from the outside, this looks like detachment. From the inside, it feels like control over overwhelm. And here's the part most people miss. People like this often feel deeply ashamed of how quickly their feelings disappear. They don't trust their own emotions. They don't build plans around them. They don't promise permanence because they've learned that promises made in intensity rarely survive calm. So they live lightly. They don't sink roots. They move. They change. They leave before resentment forms. It's not that they don't want depth, it's that depth has historically come with a price they're no longer willing to pay. This isn't something you fix by forcing consistency or guilt or proximity. You don't heal detachment by demanding more presence. You heal it, if healing is even the right word, by offering safety without consumption, by letting people come and go without punishment, by not interpreting distance as rejection, by understanding that some people bond sideways, not straight on. And maybe the hardest truth of all, not everyone is meant to attach in the same way as you. Some people are oceans, others are comets. Neither is broken, but confusing one for the other only leads to hurt.
The question people eventually ask isn't why someone becomes detached. It's, can they change, and should they? And the uncomfortable answer is this. Not all detachment is a problem to be solved. Some of it is a strategy that once saved a life. You don't rip strategies out of people without understanding what they protect them from. There's a big difference between detachment and disconnection. Disconnection is numbness, collapse, a shutdown that cuts a person off from themselves and others. That's suffering. Detachment, on the other hand, can be selective, intentional, adaptive. It allows someone to move through life without being consumed by it. From the outside, they look distant. From the inside, they're regulated. Modern psychology often tries to normalize one attachment style as healthy and quietly labels others as deficits. But health isn't uniform. Health is fit for purpose, and some nervous systems are built for flexibility, not permanence. Now, can patterns like this soften? Yes, but not by force. You don't rewire someone by insisting they stay, commit, finish, or explain themselves. That only recreates the original pressure that taught them to detach in the first place. Change only happens when safety replaces intensity. People who burn out of relationships and passions quickly often lack emotional pacing, not emotional depth. They go from 0 to 100 because they were never taught how to sit at 30. They don't know how to enjoy something without merging with it. So, the work, if they ever choose to do it, is about learning moderation of feeling, not increasing attachment. Learning that closeness doesn't mean enmeshment, that interest doesn't require obsession, that leaving isn't the only exit when something becomes heavy. But here's the crucial part. This work has to be self-directed. Friends can't do it for them. Lovers can't do it for them. Even therapists can't without consent. Which brings us to the harder question. What do you do as a friend? First, you stop trying to interpret their distance through your own attachment language. If you read absence as rejection, you'll suffer endlessly around people like this. Their silence is not commentary on your worth. It's commentary on their capacity in that moment. Second, you adjust expectations, or you walk away. This is the part people avoid admitting. You are not obligated to stay in relationships that don't meet your needs, even if you understand the psychology behind them. Compassion doesn't require self-erasure. If you need consistency, regular contact, emotional continuity, and they cannot offer that, no amount of insight will turn incompatibility into harmony. Understanding explains behavior. It does not obligate endurance. Third, if you stay, you meet them where they are, not where you wish they be. That means appreciating connection without trying to deepen it aggressively, letting them initiate closeness, accepting irregular rhythms, not keeping score, not interpreting every disappearance as a crisis. People like this often reappear when they feel safe enough to miss you. And if you punish that return with guilt or interrogation, they will leave again, faster. Now, there's another layer people rarely talk about: identity fragility. When someone's interests, passions, and relationships define them entirely, letting go feels like death. But for people like her, identity is fluid. They don't anchor themselves to roles, hobbies, or people because they learned early that anchors can drag you under when the tide turns. So they stay light. This can look immature to those who build life through accumulation, long careers, long relationships, long-term plans. But lightness is not immaturity. It's a different survival math. And here's the paradox. People who detach easily often survive losses better than those who cling. Breakups devastate others. For them, grief is sharp but brief. They don't spiral. They don't romanticize suffering. They move. That's not nothing. Now, let's address the fear underneath your question, the one most people don't say out loud. If she can detach this easily, did any of it ever matter? Yes, it mattered while it existed. Meaning doesn't require permanence. Some connections are meant to be chapters, not spines. The mistake is assuming depth must be durable to be real. A song doesn't stop being beautiful because it ends. A season doesn't lose value because it changes. People like her live in seasons. That doesn't mean they don't love. It means they don't archive love. They experience it fully, then let it go without embalming it in obligation. Now, can detachment become unhealthy? Absolutely. When it turns into avoidance of self-reflection, when nothing ever deepens, when emptiness replaces relief, when danger becomes the only way to feel alive. That's when it crosses from adaptation into distress. But nothing you described guarantees that outcome. What you described is a person who regulates emotion through movement, novelty, and distance. Someone whose nervous system rejects stagnation. Someone who may never live a life that looks stable from the outside, but may still live a meaningful one. So, the final, most important truth. Not everyone is meant to be understood through the lens of what's wrong with them. Some people aren't broken. They're just built for a different climate. And the real question isn't how to make them attach like everyone else. It's whether you can accept a relationship that doesn't grow by accumulation, but by return. Because some people don't stay. They come back. And that, too, is a form of connection.